So these agents were claiming that they were targeting gang members, MS-13 gang members.
Yeah, and you can see that when somebody is sitting in a Home Depot day laborer center. You can tell that they're gang members. You know, where are the names? Where is the evidence? Where's the warrant? You know, to me, that's the essence of racial profiling. I see somebody that looks like they might be a gang member.
So you're saying basically, Mayor, that they just saw brown and targeted that?
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
Well, there you have L.A. Mayor Karen Bass once again lashing out at the latest immigration enforcement operation in her city. DHS agents arresting 16 people in an area where they say MS-13 has a chokehold. Let's bring in Huntington Beach City Council member, restaurant owner and chef Andrew Gruhl, along with conservative commentator Alicia Krause. Thank you both for coming on. Alicia, to you first. Bass says they're going after brown people. I mean, we just told you this in common sense. They went after 16 people. They were all here illegally, and 6 of them had criminal records. So this was a targeted raid and very successful one.
And it should be a targeted raid that happens all over the city, because it turns out bad guys don't just avoid schools and businesses and churches. They make a business there. They recruit there. They use, much like Hamas, those areas as cover. And Mayor Bass should know this, considering after a multi-victim gang shooting in MacArthur Park, she proudly sent in the LAPD to stop gang violence there. Right. I would have asked her, had I been that reporter, oh, well then how did you identify those alleged gang members that you are now proud of ridding MacArthur Park of? How were you, determining if they were good or bad guys? Did they have all MS-13 tattoos? Where were your warrants, Mayor?
And what's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and most importantly, please make sure that you are following me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. With the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today, we're headed over to Los Angeles, where I'm currently located in LA, because I just want to take a moment for us to listen to the wailing and gnashing of teeth, as I like to say, of Karen Bass. Karen Bass was doing a lot of big talking and a lot of tough talking during the last ICE raid that occurred here in Los Angeles, where ICE swept through MacArthur Park. She was doing a lot of crying, and a lot of tears were flowing as it pertains to her just saying how this can't be done, and we're filing lawsuits against Donald Trump and his racist administration because these are race-based immigration raids, insinuating that what ICE is doing is just riding around the streets of Los Angeles and they spot a Hispanic individual, and if you're Hispanic, they're just going to hop out the car and arrest you, detain you, and deport you, which is obviously certainly not the case. It's funny because I was thinking about that earlier this morning as I was driving around the city, and I'm seeing all these different hot spots where if ICE was actually acting in that way, right, if they were genuinely looking to run down on pockets of Hispanics just for the sake of them being Hispanic out of sheer suspicion that they're illegal immigrants, there are so many places that you can go to outside of a Home Depot if you just wanted to randomly run down on people just off the base of race. This is given the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, I think well over 50% of the population in Los Angeles is Hispanics, well over 50% if I'm not mistaken. But just outside of that alone, there's so many hotspots, so many main roads that you can drive down where you just see a line of tents selling secondhand and third-hand goods, from clothes to cleaning products to lawnmowers and things of that nature, where if ICE was actually acting in that way, racist, they could do it a lot more aggressively. But because they're not acting in that way, they're not going to the street vendors and just randomly snatching them up, right? They're executing targeted ICE raids, and that's something that Karen Bass can't stop, and she's very upset about it. Let's take a moment to pivot and listen to what she had to say, and then what I want to do next is that I want to pivot over to Tom Homan because he has put DNC lunatic cities on his notice once again that have their nonsense sanctuary city policies. But there's a few things that I actually want to address as it pertains to some people's concerns, right, or critiques, who are saying that these deportations aren't happening as quickly as they would like. I want to address that as well once we go through the Tom Homan video. But first, let's get into what Karen Bass had to say.
In the past several weeks, we've seen the chaos and cruelty of immigration raids in this city. We have seen how they have impacted families. I am frankly worried about those families and if they're still hanging together, especially economically.
That is so insulting to everyday Angelinos, as those who are native to Los Angeles would say. I'm concerned and worried about if all Americans in Los Angeles are hanging on economically, given the fact that this is one of the most ludicrously expensive cities to live in. I think the cost of the average home here in LA now is somewhere around $850,000, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the $800,000 range. And these are not mansions, these are basic homes. The amount of money that we pay in taxes and fees and penalties and any and everything that can be taxed, right? That we can get hit with in some way, shape, form, or fashion. God forbid you're starting a brick and mortar business, all the permits and licenses that you have to buy. If you build a, let me explain to you how ridiculous Los Angeles is and the state of California as a whole. If you own a home and you build a tree house for your kid in the backyard, legitimately build a tree house, you better have a permit for building that tree house, because the city can and will come to your home and tell you to knock that tree house down if they found out you built a tree house for your children without a permit. Okay, that's how ridiculous the city is as it pertains to fines, fees, permits, and licenses. Cost of living out here is through the roof. With as much money as we pay in all this stuff, you would think that LA looks like Dubai, but in many respects, it looks like a dumpster. But she's sitting here worried about illegal immigrants and whether or not they're economically doing well, when the reality is the average person that resides in Los Angeles is not doing well. But she can care less about that. She's more concerned with her constituents that give these DNC cities an advantage over Republican non-sanctuary cities as it pertains to inflated population growth that results in an inflated amount of delegates representing that state in the House of Representatives. But that may soon be coming to an end as well, but that's for another video. Anyways, let's get back into what Karen Bass has to say here.
And talking to families that are impacted, when one breadwinner, one wage earner is gone and disappears, to survive in our city economically, you need 2, 3, and 4 wage earners to keep housing, to keep food on the table, to keep clothes on your kids. When that is taken away from you, that just doesn't destabilize a family. That destabilizes a neighborhood, it destabilizes businesses, it destabilizes a community, but we are not going to allow this administration to destabilize our great city.
If you were listening closely to what she said in the second half of the video as I continue to play it, she just articulated how garbage of a mayor that she is, how trash of a governor Gavin Newsom is, and how horrible DNC policies actually are. She just sat up here and told you that it takes 2, 3, and 4 wage earners to keep up a home in Los Angeles. That is ludicrous, but it is very true. I live here. Trust me when I tell you, it's very true. If you want to live out here and you have a relatively, now I don't even want to say a nice size family. If you just have a basic family of 4, plus maybe a dog or a cat, yeah, you're going to need the mom has to work, the dad has to work, and the teenager needs to get to work as soon as possible. And I'm going to need you to chip in on some of what's going on in this house. Okay. The goods and things that you want to buy, you're going to have to start buying them yourself. And once you get a job, because I can't assist you with all that. These bills are too high here. She just admitted that everything they stand for is backwards and has created an economic situation that requires 2, 3 to even 4 family members must be working to maintain a household. 4. I think many of us have accepted the reality across the country for the most part that in today's date, the mom and the dad has to work. Most of us have accepted that, internalized it, and said that, you know what, that's okay. But 3 and 4, that's just ludicrous. But that's Los Angeles for you. Anyways, let's pivot from here. I don't need to belabor the point. We all know that DNC politicians and their policies are horrific. Yet some way, somehow, these people keep getting voted in. But the tides may be shifting very soon. They may be shifting very soon, particularly on the governor's level. But before I even get into all that, which will be in another video, what I want to do now is get into a little bit of what Tom Homan had to say in a recent Fox News interview, because I want to address this idea that there haven't been enough deportations and that, ICE and the Trump administration aren't doing enough to push the mass deportation agenda forward. So let's take a moment to pivot to this video with Tom Homan on Fox News next.
Well, look, DHS has announced that we will see a new version of Alligator Alcatraz. It's going to pop up in Indiana. It's dubbed the Speedway Slammer and will be located 65 miles north of Indianapolis at the Miami County Correctional Facility there. Detention space will be expanded to hold about 1,000 beds to house most violent illegal criminals. And this is just before they get deported. So that's where they'll be. Alligator Alcatraz opened this summer in Florida, to remind everybody. And it can now hold 2,000 detainees and is expected to hold up to 4,000 in the future. Deportation flights of illegals there started at the end of last month. It's hard to believe that they're going to be held here for any period of time. Why can't we just kick these people out? Like, they're here illegally and they're committing further crimes.
Well, that's our intent, right? So I appreciate the other 1,000-bed facility. Mm-hmm. I would like to see larger facilities where we hold 4,000 or 5,000 people, and make that creates another efficiency. Have them one place, have an airline right there, a landing strip right there at the facility. That creates efficiencies, removes them quicker. We can move people in and out quicker. So I'd like to see the bigger facilities, but every 1,000-bed facility we bring on helps. We need 100,000 beds. That's what we asked for in the big, beautiful bill. That's what we got. 100,000 beds means we move people in and out more quickly. So I hope and pray we get to 100,000 beds as quick as possible. And I agree with you. Look, the whole process is arrest them quickly, remove them quickly. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're arresting the significant public safety threats and national security threats. And many of them have final orders already. They've had due process at great taxpayer expense. And that's why we're also looking for 1.4 million illegal aliens who already had due process and have an order removal on standby. These are also easily removable aliens. That's why we added them to the priorities.
So let's stop right there. There's not much more to this video. There's maybe about a minute or so left. We might listen to it, we might not. But I want to take a moment to go back and address this point right here, right? Concerning the Speedway Slammer. For those of you who feel as if there aren't enough deportations that are happening, and that he's not deporting fast enough to meet up to whatever you believe the standards were in your mind that mass deportations would occur, right? Whatever that number looks like to you. What you have to understand is, number one, they are just now laying down the foundations for mass deportation. With the big, beautiful bill that finally gave the Trump administration, and particularly ICE, the money they needed to lay down that foundation in order to enforce it. We have Alligator Alcatraz in Florida. Now we see the Speedway Slammer in Indiana. More of these facilities are going to start popping up all across the country, as well as the fact, as we discussed last week, it's already 78,000 people who have applied to become ICE agents since the big, beautiful bill passed, with the new cash infusion of $170 billion, I believe that it was, right, that was given to ICE. So understand, though it may appear that things are happening slow, ICE and the Trump administration just received the money that they needed in order to bring to fruition mass deportation to the level that many of us expected it to play out. They were operating off of Biden's budget up until the big, beautiful bill. And when I say Biden's budget, we're talking about the leftover money that wasn't quickly doled out to people like Stacey Abrams and these little shell nonprofit organizations that exist all across the country, right? But now there's new money on the table, and ICE is expanding. And what you're going to see moving forward is a mass deportation on a level, like Trump said, to the likes that we've never seen before. And what you're watching right now with Speedway Slammer, with Alligator Alcatraz in real time, is that foundation being laid down. But mark my words, come the end of the year, Despite the fact that you might believe that deportations aren't happening to your liking, there will be over 1 million people deported by the end of this year. And the reason that I can say that so confidently is because it will be primarily driven through self-deportations. That's where that's going to be driven from.
Have like current comprehensive numbers, specific numbers?
We can get it for you, but each specific country has given it to us along the way. But I would say we believe over 1 million people have gone home on their own.
Since the CBP Home Act?
Since we have started this administration, yes. But we've arrested hundreds of thousands that have gone through our system.
Mark my words, you'll see it. You'll see it. And what's going to happen is that the DNC lunatics on CNN, MSNBC, so on and so forth, they're going to try to convince you that self-deportations don't count. They're going to try to convince you that because they were self-deportations and they weren't through Trump's mass deportation operation that's facilitated through ICE, that this 1 million people who got deported because they deported themselves, that's not real. But don't be fooled. That's just nonsensical rhetoric. All internal deportations count, whether they're self-deportations or whether they were actually snatched up by ICE. And if you let Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller tell it, we're already at 1 million. We're already at 1 million. The official numbers aren't out yet, but mark my words, you'll see it. So what you thought was slow motion, you're going to see what's wrong. You'll be pleasantly surprised. I don't say that from a point of arrogance. I say that to give you confidence that everything Trump stated as it pertains to mass deportation is happening and will continue to happen. Mark my words, you'll see. But this is just the beginning. We're seeing the beginning of a new day of deportations being laid down right now. And with all that being said, that does it for today's news. So please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video on your social media platforms. And also, please, 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 please do not forget to follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram is in the description box below and pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you all for your time. Until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.